I attend a lot of conferences, a lot of workshops, a lot of like meetings and kind of security dialogues. We're looking at anything international, generally more security focused, conflict focused, but also economic security as well. The most recent one I went to was in Oslo, Norway. And this was a group of primarily scholars, but also people who are involved in any kind of research, analysis, consulting about what we would call ocean governance. And that all that means is anything about regulations or how to handle disputes and issues related to the oceans. So generally that, the oceans are not ruled by anybody. Nobody owns them. And so that's what we're talking about is, how do we regulate, how do we manage fishing? How do we manage what we call the blue economy? How do we take advantage of the resources, the minerals under the sea? How do we take advantage of making sure that there are free shipping lanes for everybody to have free navigation? How do we handle military vessels that are going into other countries' waters? So there were actually about 30 people at this workshop in Norway, and I was the only US-based university scholar there. And so we give our own perspectives about our research, about our analysis, but we also learn a lot about what's going on. All these different issues related to the Arctic, how that also is similar to other disputes going on in the South China Sea, for example, or in the Indian, other areas in the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. So there are lots of similarities. Right now, anywhere from 70 to 75 ongoing territorial disputes in the world, and then probably several dozen maritime disputes as well. So what that means is disputes over where the boundaries of the oceans are and where the limits of each country has their own, they have access and control over certain maritime areas. So those are disputed. So two countries will say, no, those are my waters, and no, those are our waters. And why that matters is because of access to fishing and minerals and all the things that I mentioned before. So things that are really important economically for resources. A lot of people don't know that fishing is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, we eat a lot of fish in all the countries of the world, even insular countries, have seafood and fish. And so that's a major part of a diet for a lot of countries and a lot of, a big part of the food economy. And so all of those issues are all related to these disputes. And if we don't resolve these disputes, then we have problems with fishing, we have problems with access to natural resources like oil and natural gas and minerals that are really important to advanced technology and advanced materials that are going on right now for new, ongoing technology, but also new inventions. So we are always trying to figure out solutions, but they're very much ongoing, and it will. Until all of these disputes are resolved, which will probably be never, because there will always be new disputes, that we'll just need to continue working on these resolutions and negotiations. Occasionally, we actually see escalation to armed conflict. So we see missiles being shot over maritime areas, and we see clashes of Coast Guard vessels or even sometimes naval vessels. We see fishing vessels being detained. All of this becomes kind of a snowball effect, and it really becomes a huge headache for a lot of countries that are involved. And even countries that are not on the ocean itself or don't have these disputes are indirectly affected because the fishing market is affected, the natural gas and oil industry is affected. Companies like ExxonMobil, for example, they are very interested in exploring for oil and natural gas in certain areas where we know that there are deposits of these resources. But when you have disputed waters, these companies, rightfully so, are really hesitant to go and explore for these resources because they don't want to be caught up in this dispute. So there's a whole set of complexities with these disputes. There are several people working on this issue from different perspectives. So my specialty is how to resolve these disputes legally and politically through negotiations, through international courts, through arbitration. There are other scholars and other analysts and people at think tanks and policymakers themselves who are working on this issue. But when we come together as a group of people with all of this expertise in one room, then it becomes so much more powerful and so much more effective to actually move forward and try to influence policy and make a difference in changing the context of the conflict and trying to move forward in the resolution of these disputes. I think a lot of people don't think of the oceans, especially here in Tennessee. I mean, they think of the beach and they think of fishing, but people don't realize that, the vast majority of the products sold in the stores that we shop in are coming from countries like China or Vietnam or Malaysia or other countries in Asia or other regions of the world. And all of that is done by shipping. And so if we have problems with shipping and we have global supply chain issues and there's potential for escalation, that has a real effect on all sorts of issues. So it really can affect our economy. And of course, there's always climate change. I mean, we do have very serious issues with rising sea waters and the Arctic melting, and that is going to affect a lot of coastal areas way downstream all the way to Latin America from the Arctic. So all of these things are all interconnected. I think it's really important to remember that the oceans are just as important as here in where we live in our hometowns, here in Tennessee, here in the U.S., here and wherever you live in the world.